created a PowerPoint slide.
I do. Don't tell him, but this is what it looks like.
Cool. Okay.
Since we can't hand him a plaque and his gift.
Well, he can enjoy that with his virtual meal, right?
Exactly.
That's right. So what is our virtual meal tonight?
Let's drink apple brandy and honor Jim.
That works.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, there you are, Mark. We can hear you. Elena, are you going to pass hosting back to me?
Thank you for the reminder.
Evening, everybody. This is Lee. Hope you all are doing well. Just FYI, we are streaming live to YouTube right now. So just wanted everybody to know.
So we'll watch our language.
Just for information.
Have a new changed background.
Good evening to everyone.
Hey, Pam.
How you doing? Good. Hi.
Oh, I can't find the video.
Mark, you're on video.
This is Wilma. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Good to hear you.
Can't seem to get my video up, so I'm just getting a W. So.
Good evening. My name is Don Rains. I'm the new chairman for Triangle J Board of Delegates, and I want to welcome you to our August meeting. We are doing it virtually as we've done our last few meetings, and don't know when we'll be seeing each other in person again, but I welcome that occasion. I want to go through a few housekeeping matters before we start our meeting. If you're not speaking or you're in listen mode, please put your be on mute so that there's no background noise and the person who is speaking can be heard clearly. And North Carolina state statute requires that all votes be done by roll call. So when we do the roll call, and Renee will be doing the roll call, that she'll be calling the town and then your name, and you can vote during that roll call. We'll be trying to do everything under the consent agenda to keep from having so many roll call voting, but any item can be taken off the consent agenda if you want to vote on it individually. So that opportunity will come up later. While we are starting the meeting and Renee prepares for the to make sure we for call for attendance, I want to put out a moment of silent prayer for our neighbors in Louisiana and Texas. We have a Cat 4 hurricane, 173 miles an hour, that is going to be hitting sometime tonight or in tomorrow morning, Texas, Louisiana, and it's going to be devastating. So if you would have a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. I'll ask Renee Boyette to call the roll.
Thank you, Chairman. So Town of Aberdeen, Wilma Laney,
Will Mulaney present?
Joe Danley. Town of Andrew, Bob Smith.
Present.
Town of Apex, Brett Gant.
I'm here.
Audra Killingsworth. Town of Archer Lodge, Mark Wilson. I see Mark there. And Mark Jackson. Town of Benson, Jerry Medlin. He let me know he would be here. And Cassandra Stack.
It's Cassandra Stack.
Thank you. Town of Broadway, Tommy Bill.
Here.
Donna Landrews. Town of Cameron, David Sieberling.
Cyberling here.
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I've been called worse.
Town of Carrboro, Randy Haven O'Donnell. Town of Carthage, Jimmy Chalfant. Christopher Nance. Town of Cary, Jennifer Robinson.
Present.
Lori Bush. Town of Chapel Hill, Michael Parker. Chatham County, Jim Crawford. Diana Hills. Town of Clayton, Jason Thompson. City of Durham, Deidreana Freeman.
Present.
Javiera Caballero. Durham County, James Hill. Brenda Howerton, Town of Fuquay-Varina, Larry Smith, Larry Smith, Jason Wunsch,
Yeah, I can hear you.
there's Mark.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, how wonderful. I don't know what I did.
We got you now. Town of Garner, Ken Marshburn.
I'm present.
Town of Goldston, Tim Knupp. Town of Hillsborough, Kathleen Ferguson. Town of Holly Springs, Sean McGrath.
Sean McGrath, present.
Aaron Wolf. Johnston County, Butch Lauder. Town of Kinley, Trinity Henderson. Town of Nightdale, James Robertson.
Jessica Day for the town of Nightdale.
Thank you, Jessica. Lee County, Amy Dalrymple. Kevin Dodson. Town of Micro, Jay Langston. Russell Creech. Town of Morrisville, Satish Caramella. Steve Rao.
Present.
Orange County, Sally Green.
Present.
Kenny Rich. Town of Pine Level.
Sally Green
Jeff
is here.
Holt.
Did you not hear me? I'm here.
Yes, I heard you. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Town of Pine Level, Jeff Holt. Greg Baker. Village of Pinehurst, Kevin Drum.
Present.
Jane Hogeman.
I think she's here. I don't know if we can hear her though. She emailed me that she's somehow on.
Town of Pittsburgh, Pamela Baldwin.
Present.
Michael Fiacco. Town of Princeton, Donald Raines.
Present.
City of Raleigh, Corey Branch. Town of Robbins, Lonnie English. Nikki Marshall. Town of Rollsville, Ronnie Curran.
Present.
Michelle Medley. City of Sanford, Rebecca Salmon.
Present.
Chet Mann.
This is Rebecca. Did you hear me, Renee?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm calling the delegate and the alternate because in some cases both responded. Town of Selma, Byron McAllister.
Present.
Cheryl Oliver. Town of Siler City, Bill Hages.
Siler City's in the house.
John Grimes. Town of Smithfield, Andy Moore. John Dunn. Town of Southern Pines, Carol Haney, let me know she and Bill knew the one would be here. Wake County, Sig Hutchinson.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Ford.
This is Chad Series here from Wake Forest.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. Did you say Wake Forest.
Chad Sari?
Yep, Wake Forest.
Gotcha. Thank you. Town of Wendell, John Lutz. John Boyette. Town of Wilson's Mills, David McGowan. Jim Uzzle. Town of Zebulon, Larry Lopes. I'm sorry, I know I butchered that. Larry. Or Glenn York. Okay, I know a few people came in after I started. So if you didn't hear your name, let me know. I see Jim.
Crawford, Chatham County, present.
Okay, did anyone else come in? Okay, we do have a quorum, Chairman.
Great. It's always good to have a quorum. We can conduct business. The next is a privilege for me and also for Renee to recognize the 2020 chair, Jim Crawford, and I will turn that over to Renee.
Hi, thank you. So Jim Crawford from Chatham County has been our board chairman for fiscal year 2020. And we normally in the August meeting, we recognize our past board chair. We provide them a nice plaque and a gift. So we can't do that in person. So we will do that at our next in-person meeting, which hopefully will not be very far away. But in the meantime, Elaine has created this very nice PowerPoint slide with a certificate of appreciation. And we just want to say thank you, Jim, for your service to Triangle J.
Thank you. It was, of course, a year of challenges, but I think the staff and all that are still dealing with much of it. But it was my pleasure and high honor to have served as the chair, and I look forward to helping Don and the organization move forward through the year. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for all you've done this year. We had an excellent meeting for our summit in Chatham County, and you've had a great year, and thank you for the leadership you provided to the council.
My pleasure. Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you. Next is our consent agenda, and I'm going to let Lee go over the consent agenda. I'm having some technical difficulties. I need to reboot. So, Lee, if you would go over the consent agenda for us.
Okay. We're actually still on our recognitions and presentations.
I apologize.
No worries, Mr. Chairman. No worries at all. So we're thrilled to introduce a not so new staff member now with the Area Agency on Aging. And we were hoping that we would get back in person to allow Blair to introduce herself to you all in person, but we figured we'd go ahead and do it now because we're not sure when we'll see each other again in person. So Mary, our AAA director, will kick it off, and then you'll hear from Blair.
Thank you, Lee. So good evening, everybody, and it's my pleasure to introduce officially Blair Copage, our program associate with the Area Agency on Aging. And as you heard, she's not completely new at this point. She started working with us in late February, right before our operations really changed and turned topsy-turvy a bit. So I think all of the positions, hers has probably been the most impacted in our department by the pandemic situation. She's had to onboard with a group of new people and learn new work. I'll pretty much doing it virtually. And so she's been very flexible and accommodating and patient. And so I'm actually glad to say that earlier this week, she completed her 6-month probationary period with us. So while I'm introducing her, I'm also congratulating her. And so I want to present her, have you officially welcome her, and I'm going to turn it over to Blair and let her tell a little bit about herself so you can get to know her background.
Thanks, Mary. My name is Blair Coppage. There's my picture. It was taken like my first week, so I guess I look basically the same. It's been about 6 months. All right, we're on the next slide. Sorry, I'm not in control of the slides, so I was like, I'm going to keep talking about this. I moved here, I guess in 2015, so I've lived here for 5 years now from Maryland to get my master's in bioethics and science policy at Duke. It was a really interdisciplinary program, so I wasn't sure where I was going to go with it. But when I got there, I became extremely interested in the process of aging, how that worked medically, and how that played out in, I guess, the policy world and government, which is where, you know, the medical world is affected and how we get things done. And that's how I came looking for TJ-COG and jobs housed within the AAA, which I was really fortunate to find. I'm really happy to be here. I guess I'll keep going down the list. I kind of listed it in a resume format, but I came to Duke because I was really interested in like medicine and the well-being of human beings. I became interested in that at St. John's College, where I got my bachelor's in 2014. I could tell you about it, but it was a very strange program. But it was in liberal arts and sciences, and it was a really helpful and enriching program. And I think I've become a better researcher and I guess now program support assistant as a result of it. And then while I was at Duke, this is the last bullet point, I volunteered at Durham Nursing and Rehabilitation Center with Medicaid, which is a Medicaid funded rehabilitation center and nursing home in Durham. And that's where I really solidified my interests. I just got to work hands-on with a lot of the residents there, get to know them as people, get to know their families, and it became very important to me, this population, the aging population, and just the population of North Carolina in general, where we'll all end up there. And so I think it's a very interesting and necessary focal point in government. And I guess, yeah, next slide. What I'm doing at TJ-COG is really various, and like Mary mentioned, it's very quickly evolving during the COVID times. I'm doing broadly administrative support for both the aging program and the ombudsman program, who are the people that actually go and into the facilities and speak to the people within them and help them, you know, be served. I assist with data management and preparing a lot of visual charts and graphs to track a lot of different outcomes. Lately, that's been really heavily focused on the nutrition tracking, looking at where meals are going, who they're going to, and what kind of people we're reaching in the 7-county area. I'm also helping the ombudsman. That ranges from keeping meeting minutes, mailing out posters and different pamphlets to the nursing homes, because that's as much as we can really reach them right now, and other routine support tasks. Most recently in June, we had a billboard in Raleigh. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it was for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. I shortened that in the bullet point, which focused on, you know, really just getting the awareness out there. Not a lot of people know about it, and trying to reach a broader population, and maybe we'll do that in the future, but it was our first time and it went over extremely well. I also assist with purchasing for the department. We yesterday finally got a PPE order that came in today for our ombudsman if and when they can start re-entering facilities, which is great. And I also help Mary and the program specialist with other administrative support, and basically anything they throw my way, I'll do. I'll learn it, I'll pick it up, and I keep doing that. So we'll see where that goes. And next slide. All right, and then fun facts. I can read them for you, but I've been playing the drums for 14 years. I'm in the room with all my drum sets actually right now. I practice every day. It's kind of a hobby. It keeps me going, especially during quarantine. It's been pretty great to have. a hobby I can do just by myself. I almost went to the Naval Academy. A lot of my family went to the Naval Academy. I got in actually, but it didn't turn out to be my thing. So I ended up going to that really strange liberal arts college right across the street in Annapolis. I graduated with literally 100 people, so it was very different than the United States Naval Academy, and I don't regret it, but it was an interesting choice. And I'm just learning a lot during quarantine. Recently, I've been trying to learn a little bit of ASL, which is very difficult, but YouTube's very helpful. I've also learned just a lot of general things on YouTube if anybody's ever curious. And I already mentioned why I chose Triangle J and specifically the AAA, but it's because of my desire to work toward improving the lives of older adults and just people, because we'll all be there, obviously, one day within the community.
Blair, I visited St. John College, and it is very unique. So congratulations on going to Duke and being part of our staff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is Sally. I just want to say it's not a very strange school. It's a wonderful school. So you should be proud of it. And yeah, it's a wonderful school. I didn't go there, but I know folks who did, and I wish I had. So claim that with pride.
I'm definitely proud. It's a small cohort, but it's a great one I've been a part of.
And while we're on the subject of AAA, it is my honor to appoint a delegate to the AAA board. And if there is an interest on that board, please let me know so I can make that selection between this meeting and our next board meeting, delegates meeting. So next on our agenda is the discussion of the Regional Economic Development Strategy. Lindsay Winson.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lindsay Whitson. I'm a senior planner at TJCOG. I've been there now for about 8 months, sort of like Blair started at the COG for a couple of months and then had to transition really quickly to this virtual platform. But it's been great, and I've started to meet a lot of you, the board members, and other people in the region virtually, but looking forward to meeting people face to face at some point. And I know that some of the board members have seen this presentation once or twice, but when we get to the end of the presentation and I have an interactive activity, I still welcome your input because it might help spark other people's thoughts and just, contribute to the overall conversation. So as the chairman mentioned, I will be sharing our regional economic development strategy today. And the generic term that the Economic Development Administration has given it is CEDS, C-E-D-S. So you may have heard that term before, but we wanted to put more of an inspiring twist on it that relates to our region. So we came up with Strength in Numbers, a regional plan for economic resilience and prosperity. So it doesn't have as nice of a roll, it doesn't roll off the tongue as nicely, but I think it's more reflective of our region, given the rapid population growth we're experiencing and then the opportunities that there are for partnerships as our region continues to grow. So next slide, please. I think everyone here is probably familiar with what the Triangle J region is, but just to reiterate, here's our 7 counties, and the numbers next to it are the population using ACS data in 2018. So that is about close to 2 million people with that data. So next slide, please. So what is the plan? It's a regionally driven economic development planning process. There's 3 main goals: build regional capacity, guide economic prosperity and resiliency, and then regional collaboration. And that may be in the form of public-private partnerships and just being provided the opportunity to leverage funding to help maximize our resources in the region. Next. So what is TJCOG's role? Most people on the board probably know that a few years ago we were designated as the Economic Development District through EDA, which again is the Economic Development Administration. So with that title, we're required to have this regional document and update it every 5 years. And with the development and implementation of the plan, we're able to be more competitive with our grant applications that are created throughout the region. identifying that we are already discussing these prioritized areas and starting to work towards project readiness if possible. So again, it just strengthens the application. And then also with our partnership with EDA, we're able to provide technical assistance in that area at the COG. So that's where my position comes in, as well as some of the other staff member at TJ COG. They assist with economic development related projects. Next slide, please. So the main content in the document is there's 4 main content areas. The first being summary background. So what are the current economic conditions of our region? Second is the SOAR approach. So strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. It's similar to a SWOT analysis if you've heard of that term. But basically really building off what we identify as strengths and opportunities in our region. And with those, after identifying those, we're able to turn those into goals and objectives and action plans that we can then implement throughout the region. So that would be the third major component, the action plans. And then fourth would be evaluation framework. So like with anything, monitoring what is and is not working well, what we can fix to trend the way that we want to. And this is in the form of performance measures. And with a full update every 5 years, EDA still does require interim year reports. So with that, we could track the performance measures maybe on a biannual basis or something like that to see where we're going. And then economic resilience is a component. The last 2 aren't as lengthy in the document, but they need to be recognized per EDA's guidance. So economic resiliency was a newly incorporated component a few years ago. EDA added that to their guidelines, but it's pretty fitting, especially with what's going on now. And then lastly, opportunity zones. So just recognizing that they are available and they can be utilized throughout the region. Please, Elena. And this is just a timeline. So again, where are we now is kind of what the inventory and the economic conditions of our region is recognizing. And then trending where or with the SOAR analysis, we want to see where are we going and where do we want to be. And then with the action plans, how do we get there? And then lastly, are we getting there and measuring what is and is not working? And at the beginning of the timeline is the stakeholder and public input. And that has generally takes place at the beginning and throughout. But since I started working on the document at the beginning of the year, I'm supposed to do a lot of stakeholder and public input opportunities in March and April and May. So those obviously got sidelined with COVID. And so really now starting to do more stakeholder engagement processes. And I do have a public input survey, but other than that, any of the public meetings that I was supposed to attend were obviously all canceled. Next slide, please. And with the timeline, I should mention that the deadline is December 1st. So the document is due in a couple months. So implementation approval is needed from I have a steering committee with representation of about 15 individuals. And they're sort of helping to meet in a more intimate setting where we can go over the document contents and some of the updates. I've done a SOAR analysis with them, and they'll be critical in helping to finalize the plans, final goals and objectives and action plans. And then this board, TJ COG Board of Delegates, would approve the plan as well. And then obviously, lastly, Economic Development Administration, they have a set of guidelines as that recognize whether if we are or are not in compliance, which obviously will be in compliance. But then there's the plan I'm going to create using a platform called ARC Story Map, which is a virtual platform. And so I chose this method rather than a normal paper hard copy document because it really can be more living and breathing, and amendments can easily be incorporated into the document. And with the changing climate of our economy now more than ever right now, that's going to be very important. And the virtual platform is more visual oriented and allows for a lot of images of the pictures throughout the region and graphs and infographics and things of that nature. And then the goal of the plan is also to have alignment with other local, regional, and state documents where possible. So example might be outlining some of our goals, shaping them around the rural counts agenda, or there's NC Tomorrow plan, state plan, or our regional resiliency plan that TJ Cog created prior to me being there. But alignment with documents such as those. And then again, with implementation, one of EDA's investment areas is encouraging the leveraging of funding throughout regional partnerships. And then lastly, evaluation of performance measures will be included in the document and monitored throughout the years. Next slide, please. And then the stakeholder engagement is a large component of the document. And as I said, after the presentation, I'll be collecting input from this group. And it's very important to collect broad input from different groups throughout the region, because it's what helps shape the plans, goals, and action plans. And I've met with probably 10 different groups, some TJ Cog oriented and some not. And each group I've heard something different or a few items different. There are some similarities across the groups, of course, but they've received valuable input from a wide range of groups. And then, as I mentioned, I have a steering committee, and then sort of taking the approach of going where the people are. And I've just been piggybacking off of meetings that are already taking place throughout the region. And then we have an economic engagement ambassador program. So I've had some elected officials or like city staff reach out and say they want to be a part of that program and help share any information that I've given them. Or there is something I created called Collaborate in a Box, where there are a few people out in the region that are conducting their own little small focus group. Next slide, please. And then, as I mentioned, the steering committee. So there is representation from all 7 counties. This isn't everyone in the group, but university and economic development corporation representatives, nonprofit, downtown partnership, realtor, and infrastructure related representation. Next. And then, as I mentioned, I have a public survey that originally went out in the middle of March, but I didn't really do much with it then, with everything going on with the COVID pandemic. So reopened it again back in like the late July, early August, and I'll be closing it in the next couple of weeks. But when I send a follow-up, I'll have Renee or Elena or someone include the link. So if anyone wants to share it with their networks. I think I have about 250 responses right now. And then, as I mentioned, haven't been able to hold any face-to-face public input meetings, obviously, or attend any community events. But definitely in the interim years, EDA recognizes the challenges, so it's something that can be amended into the document. Next. So some examples of the EDA grants that I was speaking about earlier. The main ones are economic adjustment assistance and public works grant opportunities that EDA has each year. So again, having these prioritized areas recognized in the document that automatically strengthens your application when submitted to EDA. And then they also provide technical assistance grants, which is what my position is funded under with the partnership and planning grant that we have with EDA. But they also have other grant opportunities like the regional innovation strategies, and those are generally provided to universities, but they translate ideas and inventions into products, services, companies, and jobs. And they do fund revolving loan fund programs, typically on a regional scale. And I already mentioned the partnership and planning. But also I wanted to mention that this year, because we are a designated EDD, we were able to receive additional additional funding from EDA from the CARES Act. So again, that's just a benefit that we automatically got for being an EDD. So now we have this extra funding where we're able to hire an additional staff member to help with COVID relief efforts in the region. And then some of you may have heard another example, one of the public works and economic adjustment assistant grant funded projects in the region was recently awarded to the town of Clayton. They received $6 million from EDA for flood control infrastructure improvements needed to protect manufacturing and other businesses in close proximity from flooding. Next slide, please. And then before I go on to the interactive session, did anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like you to talk a little more about what is the ARC story map? What is that?
Oh, yeah. Just for reference, if you want, there are only a few other, to my knowledge, EDDs that have done a ARC story map, but Land of Sky in Asheville, they did one. So you can Google that if you want and look at theirs, but it's just highly interactive with mapping and visuals. And like I said, a lot of graphs, and it's not your typical hardcover document that just sits on the shelf. And it's not that you're still capturing the language and the narrative, but a lot of it is linked elsewhere. So the actual document itself on ARC story map is kind of shortened. Again, it's a lot of visualization, but then there'll be links that take you elsewhere to like an executive summary or a county profile or something like that. But it's kind of also one of the purposes too, is if you really want to use the tool, but not have to like shift to page 75, it's just it highlights the most important components right in that one platform. And I think Lee just put something in the chat, so it might actually links you to an article or some sort of example of an ARC story map. They're becoming pretty popular, not just with this document. A lot of other, I've seen a lot of other planning related documents starting to be created in that format.
Yeah, Lindsay and Mr. Chair, it's the link to the Land of Sky comprehensive economic development strategy. So ARC at GIS, it's the GIS platform that many of us use. You use it's an Esri product, so that's the foundation of what Lindsay's doing. And I was thrilled when she said, "We're not going to do a paper document. We're going to make this interactive." I was like, "Go for it."
It's my first time doing it though, so no, it's actually been pretty user friendly so far.
What about this is Steve Rao. What about broadband? Is that we've had people in the past come in, Jeff Searles from DIT, to talk about broadband. Is that going to be a continued discussion, especially during COVID and post-COVID? I think so many things have changed just with teleworking, online education, and of course, there's so many economic factors just in terms of how cities are going to be affected by the new economy. So.
Yeah, I mean, broadband's been one topic that has been mentioned definitely under the opportunity section. It might look differently than it was years ago, but building off of the opportunities that are available so that we can provide more access, and not only just access, but digital literacy in general has been a talking point too with opportunity in the past groups that I've met with.
Yeah, I got two things, and I don't know if this is the time or it's the end, but one was who are the representatives in Moore County in the smaller group? But Pat Corso probably, and who else?
No, it's someone from Moore County Extension, so it's not necessarily someone from the government.
Non-economic development. You don't.
Some counties, but not that particular county. I had to select people from different areas from each county.
Okay, well, hopefully I'll send you a link then. Just alignment of the goals the county has. Maybe that's something helpful for you to have.
Okay.
And
yeah.
And so that's Moore County Extension is the only one on that. right? On this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Who is that? Who is that? You know?
Deb Griffin or
Okay.
Mick Griffin.
Okay. And then the only comment I made just as my thinking of the bigger county issue is I think there's gaps between I think specifically in county-wide economic development organizations, we're finding, and it's probably been exaggerated during COVID here, but it's also happened before, is that there's a gap, meaning that economic development usually is development that affects the whole area, and there's a gap in specific downtown economic development, small town time economic development, which used to happen naturally, and now all of a sudden you have to work harder at it. So I just want to bring up that gap. There's kind of a gap in economic development, meaning economic development seems to be going good because North Carolina is a wonderful place and a lot of big things want to happen here, but we're starting to see the importance of small things
Mm-hmm.
and communities. And I really don't know how to articulate that, but I'm going to attempt to do it via email. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think I got what you're saying.
Yeah.
And to reiterate, the CARES Act perhaps could be providing some funding for broadband and for other activities that Lindsay may be using at some point as well.
So can you go to the next slide, Elena, please? So this is what the SOAR analysis is, and I still do have a couple of questions. So strengths are obviously what are we doing well in our region and what are our assets, opportunities, what partnerships exist, how do we turn our outside threats into opportunities that we can build upon, and then aspirations, obviously where do we want to be, where do we see ourselves going, and then results, how do we get there, and how are we going to succeed? So the next slide is the first question that the next slide, actually, that's the set of questions I asked, but what are Triangle J region's greatest strengths and what are our best assets? So again, with these questions and the other stakeholder groups I've met with and the public survey, I'll be able to find, well, what are the most common themes? And with that, create the goals and the action plans. So next slide, please. Before I allow the board to answer, this is what others have said so far. And the top three are highlighted, they're bolded. It's hard to tell, but between my different groups that I've met with and the survey responses that I've received thus far, access to education was by far the #1 response. And being very research oriented in this region, but also talented workforce and just overall access to talent. And then having a very diverse economy. And you can see in the second column, diversity of people was also mentioned. But I just wanted to show this list, things like cost of living, environment. I've heard a lot about resilient industries and even more so now with COVID. But building off of either adding on to any of these items or building off of this list, is there anything else that this group wants to discuss along the strength and asset component?
Yeah, this is Sally again. And Lee will remember that I asked him the other day on email, whatever happened to the idea of doing a region-wide study of where housing is or should be versus where development is. And so affordable housing is, of course, embedded in cost of living. But it's just disappointing to me to think that we can't really work cooperatively across the region about, or maybe we can, I shouldn't put it as a negative, but I would hope that we can work across the region to talk cooperatively about affordable housing and the best places for it and how it works across the region and how it strategically works to help attract industry.
And the only thing, you got it all covered here, but I thought our geography, we're blessed with some incredible, North Carolina is located in one of the best locations. It's in the South, temperate climate, but it's kind of in the, mid-Atlantic. It's coastal. Its geography is it's blinding glimpse of the obvious. I guess it doesn't have to be mentioned, but I think we're kind of blessed.
And along that note, I would say leisure activities. Perhaps Kevin is in the leisure capital of the.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's maybe that's blended with geography, mountains, the coast. I mean, it's just incredible geographic state, and I don't know how to articulate that, but it does help in economic development. I can tell you that firsthand.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to chime in on what Sally said. This is Wilma about the affordable housing. I'd like to see, more talk about that because there's a lot of people that cannot even afford to live where they work, and it just doesn't seem to. It seems like that's really going to be a very challenging thing, and I'd like to talk more about that.
Any others?
Yeah, hey, this is Sean McGrath from Holly Springs. I'd like to bring up, I think before we ever get to the affordable housing side, that we actually need to add a sub-bullet underneath the access to education, and that needs to be the skills training. I think this economy is showing that we can't just focus on one area, and we actually need some skills training. I was just in a location up in Ohio where there was some great public-private partnership between the communities there and a skills-based training university, if you will, to help a lot of our folks in the lower income brackets to develop those skills that they need before they can even start worrying about housing.
This is Randy. I would just add with environment, you have people and climate, but I think that this is what Kevin was getting to with geography. We also have just a truly beautiful treasure in the non-built and natural environment.
Thank you. I'm taking notes. I also wanted to add that at the end of this, we'll be sending sort of a SOAR template to this group too. So if you think of anything after this meeting, or you just want to type your ideas out, it'll be pretty easy for you to do that. But just for the interest of time, I think we should move on to the next question. Elena, please. So what are Triangle J region's greatest opportunities for economic growth? And some of these might be similar to the strengths. But again, what have others said? Technology, building upon manufacturing, biotech, and pharmaceutical industries, workforce training and opportunities, and access to and connectivity of transportation systems were the four that I've seen the most in conversation. But a lot of discussion around equitable economic development, and a lot of the other things on this list: supporting entrepreneurs, smart and sustainable development, regional collaboration, things of that nature. So with that being said, same question: does anyone want to add anything or build upon this list?
I would just add for Johnston, Harnett, Lee, Chatham County, agricultural, and Orange County, and others, that agriculture is still a big key to our success.
I would just add, just because it's not noted, but the collaborations and the partnerships are a huge way forward, and I know that that's how we've gotten this thus far, and so making sure that that's stated.
And this is Sig Hutchinson in Wake County, and I definitely think that broadband needs to be added to this. You can look at it from an opportunity perspective and what it can mean for our state, but it also needs a lot of help. And so I think that if anything, we need to highlight the essential need for broadband from a variety of perspectives.
Thank you. Let's see. Is there anything in the chat? Okay. Did anyone have any other things they wanted to add with this? Dick gives the thumbs up. So we can go to the next slide, Elena. What does your ideal Triangle J region look like over the next 10 years and how do we get there? This is the aspiration and the result part of the SOAR analysis. And if you go to the next slide, Elena, you can see that how do we get there? A lot of people said by measuring performance measures, again, trending our progress, identifying best practices, lessons learned. But also people would like us to continue to maintain our competitive edge. And that includes opportunities of innovation for all ages, attracting new industries, and some economic development folks have said taking the burden off local governments when welcoming bigger projects and businesses to the region. But as I said earlier, addressing disparities has been discussed in most of my groups, so including economic and social mobility, educational opportunities, racial and ethnic disparities, and then of course health disparities. But effective resiliency planning, and then connected and alternative transportation, and then healthy communities around social determinants of health. So same question, is there anything you're surprised to see or you would like to build upon or see added?
I think Sid's comment earlier about broadband, but I would also add infrastructure.
This is Mark Wilson from Archer Lodge. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All through this presentation on the educational opportunities and whatnot, has anybody taken into consideration what is the new norm for education due to the virus and whatnot? Children are not going to school anymore. They're being educated at home. And how are we going to look at higher education? How are they going to fit into the future of what we're looking at?
No one's brought that up.
That's a great point, Mark. And this is Steve Rao from Morrisville. And I think as a father of one high schooler now and a daughter at Carolina, it's been very hard to watch my son go from going to school every day to just being at home and just almost like stuck, with the virtual learning. I think the opportunity could be that education is going to have to become much more flexible and quick and agile so that these young kids can learn the skills that they need very, very quickly to fill many, many new jobs that are going to be created. John Chambers, he's coming in next week for a virtual summit from CEO of Cisco, and he said that over 40% of the jobs in the next decade are going to be automated away, but there'll be 15 to 16 million new jobs created. And many of those jobs don't even exist yet. So the key is how do we get our kids to learn all those different skills? And so it may be that the whole model may be shifting to, going to community college and then coming back and going to college, doing it online. It's going to be so different. And all of us are so used to the traditional kind of go to high school, go to college, go to graduate school, get a job. I think that's what we're all going to have to get used to. That's just I've been reading a lot about that issue.
I saying that as a career educator, we think of things as education as being linear, and I think we need to be thinking of economic development and education and environment and social networks as being more like a spiral, moving ahead a little bit in one direction and maybe pulling back, because this is all going to be transitional over the next decade. I really appreciate that comment.
We're going to have a lost decade of education for children. How are we going to measure their abilities for the future workforce. If they're not actually in school with a teacher, they're at home on a computer, and I just fear that we're going to have a lost decade of math, sciences, and preparation for the future for our kids.
This is Sig again, and I first highlight the comments about education. You know, education has made North Carolina great, from Terry Sanford to Jim Hunt. We at one point were right down there with Mississippi and and Louisiana, and what brought us to the forefront of being a great state was education. But in addition to that, I want to pick up on Don's comment around investment in infrastructure. You know, we talked about broadband, but it's also other infrastructure such as ports and airport and rail and transit and industrial parks that create opportunities for business to want to come and be part of our North Carolina system. And also our community college system that trains people to be working at these businesses that want to come here. So definitely education as well as investment in infrastructure.
I'd like to add, this is Mayor Smith of Anger. I taught at Wake Tech, and Wake Tech has been doing a lot of online courses for over 5 years. So I think we should be proud they led the way.
Any other additions? Thanks, Lindsay. Next one.
Yeah, that was the last question I had. But as I said, we'll send a template for the SOAR analysis. If anyone has any thoughts that come up, or they, you know, if anyone needs any clarification on anything, I'd be happy to answer. So I can provide my email as well. But thank you for having me here tonight.
Lindsay, this is very informative, and I think this is going to be a big opportunity for Triangle J to be successful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Before we get into review of our personnel policy, I just want to thank Jennifer Robinson. She's joined us, and she is the new president of the League of Municipalities. So thank you for your leadership, Jennifer. If she's still with us. But I got an email from her today. She's looking for representatives on the lobbying committee. So in any event, thank you, Jennifer, for your leadership. And I will turn it over to Lee and Jenny to go over our revised personnel policy that everyone's had an opportunity to review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and delegates. Good evening. From an engaging conversation about your vision of the triangle over the next 10 years to personnel policy. I apologize, but you know, when you're on the board, you get stuff that's exciting to engage in like that, and then a personnel policy review. Next slide, please, Elena. But we do have the personnel policy before you, a revised policy for your consideration, and I'd request your adoption of that tonight. I'm going to give a pretty high level review of the changes because we have discussed this quite a few times, and I'll talk about the process with you. Why are we doing this? Our policy has not had a in-depth review and revision in at least 10 years. So it was certainly time for that. And as we've reviewed this, we have committed to what we're going to begin doing in the future is doing a quick review of the policy every year so that we don't have to go through such a laborious review, you know, by letting it linger on for a longer time. I do want to thank a number of folks on staff, Renee Boyette, Jenny Halsey, department heads, all the members of the staff. They've all had a hand in reviewing and giving input to this, as well as our attorney, Chris Gardner. He has reviewed this many times as well. So I feel really confident that this is been reviewed, and we feel really good about that. Having said that, with a policy like this, we're going to find a mistake once we get this adopted, and that's why we want to look at it every year. But just some timeline. We've been working on this draft now for about 2 years as we've had time. We brought a revised draft to the officers in November of 2019, and the officers requested some changes, which I'll try to highlight the most major ones. We then had some staff focus sessions in December of 2019 and January of 2020 to sort of review this with staff. And we actually got really good input from staff and some things that we had actually missed that staff pointed out that we added to the document at that time. We reviewed this in front of the executive committee, so a subset of this board, back in February of 2020. They had a couple suggestions, but they also voted to recommend adoption of the policy to the board. And it was our intent to bring this to you in March or April. And you've heard this a couple times. Then COVID hit. And I was hoping maybe we would get back in person to be able to do this, but we haven't. And I think it's important that we go ahead and get the revised policy adopted. We have a number of administrative policies that will need to be written to coincide with the personnel policy once it's adopted. And just as an overview, the personnel policy for Triangle J operates just like the policies in your jurisdictions. They lay out the entire personnel system, from how you hire somebody, how somebody exits the organization, pay plan, benefits, grievance procedures. All of that is contained in this document. So next slide, please. Also, we offered some detailed, for the board members that maybe weren't on the executive committee, we offered some dates at the beginning of August to do a detailed review, article by article. We had a few of the board members attend that, so I appreciate you all doing that. So this is a review of the major changes in the document. And the document was included in the agenda. We have expanded the definition of at will at the request of the executive committee to give that a little bit more definition. Under the statutes and under the policy, all employees at Triangle J are at will employees, but there's certainly procedures and things we have to go through if we were to terminate employment. Another major area of focus with the changes in this policy was to streamline how we implemented FLSA, or the Fair Labor Standards Act. Prior to the revisions, we were using whether somebody was exempt or non-exempt from FLSA to determine things like vacation leave, how much vacation leave somebody could take. So non-exempt employees could take quarter-hour increments, where exempt employees would have to take full-day increments. So the changes in this policy really narrow the FLSA to only apply for overtime, which is what FLSA is meant to do. We want to treat all employees equally for everything else. So there were several tweaks we had to make to the policy in order to make that happen. Next slide, please. With that, we really did not articulate in the policy what we expected from all employees in terms of a full work week. So we clarified language in the policy that all of our employees, whether they're exempt or non-exempt, are expected to work at least 37.5 hours per week. And that can be done through a combination of hours work or vacation, sick leave, comp time, or holiday. There were some loopholes in the policy that didn't clarify that for certain employees. And we need to also develop some administrative policies with regard to that as well. There's several procedures that we just handed off to our attorney because they dealt with things like sexual harassment or disability-related accommodations, which are really governed by federal law. So we've completely revised those sections on the advice of our counsel to make sure that we are in compliance with all federal laws and policies. We did make one tweak to the sexual harassment section at the request of the officers, which we certainly coordinated with our legal counsel. So we changed reports of harassment, including sexual harassment, to reports of sexual harassment, because the policy now directs employees to the grievance policy in the paragraph above. And we added hostile environment can be created through the actions of a single harasser or the conduct of a group. So we had not clarified that harassment could occur by an individual or a group of individuals, and both are not going to be tolerated by the organization. All right, next slide, please. This first item is probably the largest policy change that I would say is a negative impact to employees that may join the organization after this policy is adopted. Currently, we do provide paid medical insurance for retired employees based on a sliding scale. So as early as 5 years of credit with the COG, if you retire, we could pay, I think it's 25% of your medical insurance until you're Medicare eligible. And that goes up to a 20-year employee can have their individual medical insurance paid 100% by the COG. I'm recommending, and the officers in the executive committee supported, that we no longer provide that benefit to any new employees. We will, of course, grandfather any existing employees to receive that benefit, but it just financially, it really adds to our liabilities, and it's just not something I'm comfortable that we can sustain into the future. We were asked by the executive committee to explore the possibility of offering the insurance to retirees fully at their cost. So when we finally get to the point where one of these employees that joins the organization after this is adopted may retire, the executive committee said, hey, take a look at if you could just offer them the insurance, but have them pay for it. We checked with the league who provides our insurance, and they recommended against it because it's just extremely difficult to do administratively. And so we continue to recommend that that we just put an end to it with any new employees. Another change is to our educational assistance program. We've tried to increase the value of that. So we've increased the amount that somebody can be reimbursed for educational assistance from $500 to $1,500 per fiscal year. We've also clarified the current policy was pretty vague in terms of what qualified for an educational reimbursement. So we had questions about, somebody went to a conference, would that qualify? And we've put in a new program for professional development opportunities for employees to take advantage of that, and clarified that this educational assistance program only applies to individuals working on an associate's, a bachelor's, or a master's degree. So that's when that would kick in. A couple other items, holidays. The officers had recommended adding 2 floating holidays to the holiday schedule for Triangle J employees, recognizing that many of our employees may celebrate different types of holidays for different reasons, whether it's cultural or religious. And our holiday schedule, quite honestly, follows a Christian holiday pattern. So there are 2 additional floating holidays added into the holiday schedule at the choice of a Triangle J employee. Lastly, in terms of benefits, we did a study of our vacation accrual rates compared to other COGs. Obviously, retaining our employees is very important, and found we were near the bottom in terms of our vacation accrual rates, especially for employees with less than like 5 years of service. So the new policy would increase the tier, increase the amount of vacation that can be earned by 2 days for each tier. Next slide, please. Couple other changes going into the same sort of areas, things that are federally mandated, and we hand it off to our council or areas around workers' compensation and military leave to make sure that we're in compliance with all federal regulations. Next slide. And that's it. Again, I'll say this has been a lot of work. There's been a lot of input. I feel really good about where we are now, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. The only other thing that I would ask is that the board, if they decide to adopt the policy tonight, that you would adopt it effective September 6th. That will allow us to smoothly implement this with the start of a payroll cycle, and it'll just make it a lot easier with accruals and those sort of things. So happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have any questions pertaining to the changes in the personnel policy that Lee or Jenny might can answer?
This is Adriana in Durham. I just had one question regarding the hostile work environment. Does that allow for a complaint to be kind of, I guess, addressed around race or gender, or, I mean, not just gender, but race or sexuality? Like, I mean, is it expanded? Yes. Okay, just making sure.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Lee, this is Mark Wilson.
Yes, sir.
The military leave. Did we consider, I don't know if there's any employees in the reserves or National Guards or whatnot, if they were called to active duty?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And that really is what it's geared most toward, Mr. Wilson, is for any employees that may be serving in the National Guard or the reserve. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay.
Any additional questions? This has been about 2 years in the works and been reviewed several times. And I want to thank the TJ COG staff for moving forward with this revision that's very much needed. This will be on our consent agenda unless anyone requests it to be moved off. And on our consent agenda, there is also the approval of the May 22nd Board of Delegates minutes, approval of some budget changes, adoption of the revised Triangle J Council Government's personnel policy, modifications of TJ COG position classification plan. So if Lee or Judy want to go over the budget changes.
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to. And Mary Warren is here as well in case there are any question. I think all of these budget changes, if not 90% of them, are directly related to funding we are getting for aging programs from the CARES Act and from the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So, it's almost $3 million, I believe, worth of funding that's coming to us from the federal government that will be getting out to providers related to COVID-19. Mary, I hope I presented that correctly.
Yeah, it's all contracts and things, funding that we've gotten since the original budget was adopted in May. Most of it, again, related to the coronavirus. And it actually, some of it was available at the end of last fiscal year, but now has to be rolled over into this year.
Right.
Mr. Chair, Mark Wilson again. Do we need to include a September date as Lee had requested for the personnel policy?
I have no problem with that as long as we get it approved and we can get it into our system.
Mary, I think Mr. Wilson was talking about the adoption of the personnel policy, not the budget amendments.
Yeah, that
Right.
could be, that could be made in the motion to approve the consent agenda.
And that date, Lee, was September the what?
September the 6th, sir.
6th, okay.
The next is the modification of TJ Cog's position classification plan.
I'll take that one, sir. Yeah, we're just adding a position to the classification plan. You'll see it as an assistant to the executive director. And my hope is that will provide some upward mobility for a well-deserving member of the staff.
Any questions for Lee? Okay, and the last item is the 2021 calendar, and it pretty much follows the calendar that we've used for years. So it's pretty much the last Wednesday in each month except for July. And alternately, the executive committee meets and the board meets. So if there's no comments or questions, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the personnel policy being implemented effective September the 6th, 2020?
So moved, St. Hutchinson.
Adriana and Durham.
Second.
I did not get the names of who made the motion, so if you could repeat.
Adriana Freeman and Durham.
Okay. So, DeAndre, you made the motion? Okay.
Bill Haggis is a second.
Okay, thank you. And it's my pleasure to turn it over to Renee, who's going to do the roll call.
Thank you. So before I do roll call, I think we had some people join since the beginning of the meeting. So if you just please unmute and let me know you're here.
Larry's here from Fuquay Marina.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ferguson's here from Hillsborough.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Renee, this is Jennifer Robinson. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, yay. Okay, I've been here the whole time.
Butch Lauder, Johnston County.
Anyone else?
Renee, this is Ken Marshman in Garner. I couldn't tell if you could hear me or not.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So with the vote, each member government has one vote. So in the case where there's a delegate and an alternate present, I will only ask the delegate to vote. So if I skip you, that is why. Okay, Wilma Laney, Aberdeen.
Wilma Laney votes aye.
Bob Smith, Anger.
Vote yes.
Brett Gant, Apex. Mark Wilson, Archer Lodge.
Vote yes.
Cassandra Stack, Benson.
Vote yes.
Tommy Beal, Broadway. Tommy, did we lose you? Oh. See if I can unmute you. There we go.
Did you hear me?
Oh, now we can hear you.
I vote yes.
Thank you. David Cyberling, Cameron.
Cameron votes yes.
Randy Hayden O'Donnell, Carborough.
Aye.
Jennifer Robinson, Cary.
I vote yes.
Jim Crawford, Chatham County.
Chatham votes yes.
Deidreana Freeman, Durham.
I vote aye.
Larry Smith, Fuquay Varina.
Fuquay votes aye.
Ken Marshburn, Garner.
Garner votes aye.
Kathleen Ferguson, Hillsborough.
Hillsborough votes aye.
Sean McGrath, Holly Springs. I think he might have left. Butch Lauder, Johnston County.
Johnston County votes yes.
Jessica Day, Nightdale.
Nightdale, aye.
Dee Brow, Morrisville.
Aye.
Steve. I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. Sally Green, Orange County.
Orange says aye.
Kevin Drum, Pinehurst.
Aye.
Pamela Baldwin, Pittsboro.
Aye.
Donald Raines, Princeton.
Aye.
Ronnie Curran, Rollsville. Rebecca Wallace Sullivan,
Stanford votes aye.
thank you. Byron McAllister, Selma.
Byron McAllister, aye.
Bill Hages, Dollar City.
Dollar City is aye.
Sig Hutchison, Wake County.
Vote aye.
Chad Sari, Wake Forest.
Aye.
Okay, did I miss anyone? Right, okay. We have a majority saying aye.
Thank you, Renee. And it's a pleasure getting this personnel policy through. I know it's been a long process, but thank you for moving forward with that and the rest of our consent agenda. With that, I'm going to go to my chairman's report. And in addition to being chair for TJCOG, I'm also chair for North Carolina Forum on the Council of Government. And one point that was mentioned at the last forum meeting was what various communities were doing with CARE Act money. And the CARE Act money could go for, a lot of people were using it for personnel related law enforcement and some other areas that obviously expenses have gone up in, and it obviously is in the area of reimbursement. But in talking to the forum group, there's roles that can be played with broadband. And in my meeting that I had after that with the Johnston County manager and our town manager, and I will soon be meeting with other mayors, we found that public schools had got CARE Act money, put hotspots on their campuses so students could go study on the school campus when school is not in session. Most of the public libraries in Johnston County had hotspots outside the library. So in Johnston County, we're looking at putting hotspots at the rural fire departments in every public building in Johnston County to to enhance the ability for students to have broadband services with public Wi-Fi, and perhaps even people who are filling out job applications that do not have good internet service in their home. So there's opportunities and challenges throughout the 7 counties, and we appreciate the opportunities that the CARE Act does provide for us, because life is not life has changed. And with our prior discussion, when kids can't study at school, if they got to do it virtually, they need access to the internet. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the vote on the personnel policy. And again, I just want to thank everybody that was involved with that. It was a long process, and I wish I could say it was over, but now we've still got work to do. But thank you. I do want to highlight, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time this evening highlighting just the incredible work that our staff's doing. And I hope through some of these updates, you'll see how we're impacting the region, but also working hard to try to be of service to all 44 of our local government members. It's not always easy when you have members stretched across a wide geography and very diverse in terms of size and scope, but I think we do a really good job providing services. And it starts with our aging department, our AAA. You saw the budget amendment. They've been working so hard with COVID related issues. I know the director, Mary Warren, is just really been hard at work, whether it's engaging with service providers that are struggling with how to provide meals, or dealing with the state and the ever-changing rules on how to account for money and spend money and things like that. It seems every day we get a new rule on what we should do. The entire team takes it in stride and has done a great job. Blair highlighted that we did order a large supply of PPE, so that one day when our ombudsmen are ready to go back in facilities, they'll be properly protected. But even though they're not in facilities, they're continuing to engage and figuring out ways to stay connected. With respect to our focus on water resources, I was really happy to see that we've landed a new opportunity to be the administrator for the city of Raleigh and Durham for the Watershed Protection Program. And that really impacts the entire region because of the watershed and the number of communities that Raleigh and Durham impacts with their water supply and water distribution system. Really appreciate our team's hard work with doing that. I know Ms. Green mentioned housing, and we're doing a lot in housing. We haven't quite gotten to that regional study yet. I really hope one day we'll get there with your help and encouragement, but we're still doing lots of interesting things. One thing I'll highlight is we're even helping other COGs with housing issues. We've partnered with the Mid-Carolina COG, which serves Cumberland County, Harnett County, and Sampson County. And we're actually going to be the technical staff to do a housing study for the city of Fayetteville. And so we're happy to be able to provide that service and help Mid-Carolina as they rebuild their COG and provide services to their local governments. In our economic development focus, Lindsay mentioned our CARES Act funding. We actually got official notification today of a $400,000 grant that we've received from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And we'll talk to the executive committee a little bit more about some plans that we have for that funding. But we're really excited about maybe being able to provide better and deeper technical assistance opportunities for some of our local governments, especially maybe some of our smaller and more rural local governments, things like planning technical assistance, maybe partnering with the Rural Center to do leadership development programming, working on 160D compliance in the area of planning, maybe even helping to provide capital improvement plans for those small local governments that just don't have the capacity to be able to do it themselves. In addition, we're working on a number of other grant applications. I know we're working on one in Lee County. We're working on one in Johnston County. I think we're working on one in Chatham County as well, and probably others that they haven't even told me about that they're just working on. Our transportation team is working really hard. It's the big push right now with the MPOs to begin development of the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And our staff is integral to the development of those plans that Campo and the Durham Chapel Hill MPO develop. We do data and help convene, and we do a ton of work. We're also working in the more rural areas. Our staff continues to staff and work with TARPO, the RPO in our region. On the member engagement side, we're actively talking with one of our members about maybe providing a manager search. We're working also with two of our members on potential paying class studies. I had the honor of working with our chair and the mayor of Pine Level on some opportunities that they're talking about, and going to help them with some interlocal agreements. And then we have our regional summit. So I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to let Elena get you excited about the regional summit, because we're not going to be in person, but we're going to be virtual, and it's going to be just as fun and just as engaging and just as informative. So Elena, quickly, something about the regional summit.
Very quick, and the bar has been set very high by that. Thank you.
All right.
So yes, as everyone knows, every year in the fall, we have a regional summit. This will be our 4th annual that many of you have been able to attend in past years. Obviously, we cannot have it in person. And we're also aware that everyone is busy and zoomed out. So we have broken up the summit into 5 Thursday mornings, starting September 17th. 5 weeks, an hour and a half each Thursday morning. So I would encourage all of you to join us, as many of those sessions as you can. You do not have to attend them all. The topic is going to be on equity and the importance of local government policies and practices in relation to equity. So I would definitely encourage, if you can only make it to some of them, I would definitely encourage you to come to the first one is September 17th. That's going to be more workshop style, while the 4 after our panel discussions. And we're going to have Sharon Williams from the city of Durham. She's their racial equity and inclusion manager. She will be leading a hands-on workshop about institutionalizing equity in policies and practices, which is her job that she does every day in Durham. And the hope is that that can set the stage for the 4 sessions that come after that workshop. So there's different topics for the other 4 sessions around engagement, development, policing, and community livability. The first session kind of sets the stage, gives you the tools to think about those topics in relation to equity, and then you can continue on with the other 4 sessions. So definitely sign up, encourage your staff to sign up. It's going to be a great 5 weeks, 5 Thursday mornings. So bring coffee too.
There you go. Thank you, Elena. Just a couple other quick things. I'm working on some potentially exciting opportunities in collaboration around solid waste. Really can't share more about that right now, but having some interesting discussions with some member governments about solid waste collaboration. We're also working with the managers and assistants. The International City County Managers Conference has gone to virtual for this year. So we are working with the managers in the region to actually do a conference cohort, which will be interesting to have us all together. But it also saves all your managers $100 on the registration fee. So rather than the registration at $199, if they register through our cohort, they can do it for $99. So it's a great opportunity to get ICMA conference training at a really good price. And then finally, strategy and innovation and data. Our staff's working with our strategy and innovation network, which is made up of innovation staff, planning staff, strategic planning staff, and other individuals from budget on a potential regional academy to leverage each local government's strengths around training. And we're also working on an exciting opportunity with several local governments in Riot, which works on economic development around the Internet of Things, working on some stormwater projects, but more broadly, it's really data sharing and could really open up our regional opportunities around sharing data between local governments. Finally, the last thing I'll say is I'm really excited that we have a very real possibility of adding another member government. And it is my hope that maybe in October, we will be welcoming Moore County back into COG membership. We've had some really positive discussions with them over the last year, and their board of commissioners is set to vote on membership in September, and they actually budgeted the dues into their budget this year. And so we're really excited about that possibility to have all 7 of our counties back in membership at Triangle J. So, Mr. Chair, with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Lee. I'm very excited about Moore County because I think that will almost every entity in Triangle J will be a member, and that's almost unheard of. So thank you, Lee, and the staff and the mayors and delegates in Moore County for making that happen. Our next meeting will be the executive committee meeting. That'll be in September, and then we'll have our delegates meeting in October. And I'm gonna turn it over now around the region to Elena to handle that part of the program.
We actually don't have a topic for tonight for Around the Region because that was kind of the hope that the regional economic development discussion that Lindsay led earlier would take the place of this piece of it. But I would encourage if anyone has anything else they'd like to very briefly share in relation to that discussion, maybe about your personal aspiration for your community's economic development vision in the next 10 years, feel free, but don't take long.
Elena, this is Steve Rao. I think I just wanted to let you all know that next Thursday I'm hosting John Chambers, the former CEO and chairman of Cisco, for a virtual startup summit, and he's going to be delivering a fireside chat that I'll be moderating. But I'm going to invite everyone in the COG because he's a global leader in the technology industry. Took Cisco to $47 billion, and he's going to be talking about surviving and thriving in a COVID economy and sharing his experience as somebody that went through 5 downturns. So he's a family friend of mine, and we're going to bring him here personally in a couple of months, but he wasn't able to make it here in person. So, but I think the timing is good because even though we're governments, he actually, when I spoke to him last week, he wanted governments to come because he's very excited about how governments and business can work together to get the economy back on track. So I think it would be a good experience for all of us. So I'll send you the email, and it's sold out in minutes, but we're going to be buying more Zoom licenses so we can get more people to attend. But it'll also be streaming on Facebook as well. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mark Wilson from Archer Lodge. I don't know, didn't hear anybody from Clayton here tonight, but if everybody would keep the town of Clayton's fire department in their thoughts and prayers, they've been hit pretty hard with the virus, and some of them have been hospitalized. The last number I heard was about 12 of their firemen.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you for bringing that up. And our hearts go out to them and every public and private entity that's had COVID-19 people that have been affected. We'll start with Aberdeen and go to Zebulon, or if that's the alphabet. But if anyone has anything to add, please add.
Yes, this is Will Mullaney from Aberdeen. And I just wanted to say that on Monday night, we had our town hall meeting, and a gentleman came to speak before us, Mr. Cliff Brown, and he talked about the homeless in Moore County, and we know there's homeless people in Aberdeen. And I guess I hadn't really thought about that a lot because I was so happy about it seems the county has so many food centers. There's no lack of food there, and so I said I'm going to give him a call because it was very. This is a time when we don't need homeless people out there. We don't ever need them out there, but with COVID-19 out there. So I just thought I would mention that and see if anyone else has come across that in their county or any talk of that. And because there are homeless people everywhere. So I just wanted to see if anyone else had heard from anybody. This man has just started another organization and he is actually helping homeless people. Thanks.
Anyone else?
This is Sally from Orange County. I can say I'd like to speak to the homeless thing a little bit. In Orange County, we do have a lot of work going on to address homelessness, and we're using a significant part of our COVID funds to address housing needs and rental assistance, and particularly to take the people who are in our men's shelter, which is a congregate living facility, and we've actually put those people in hotel rooms. So I don't know how long we can do that, but that's what we're doing there. Then I also wanted to, I guess, go back to the broadband discussion because I know we're all struggling with that. I've really had my eyes opened as in Orange County to how much of the county is not covered by any broadband, much less weak broadband. And we're all struggling with solutions that we can come up with under the very restrictive state law. But I just want to think ahead to next spring when we start lobbying our legislators again, hopefully a different set of legislators. But we've got to get some kind of statewide help on this. And it boggles my mind that even with a majority Republican group of folks in Raleigh, that there's so much resistance to some public help there because all of our North Carolina is so primarily rural, and even Republican counties are rural. So it's just a big frustration to me, and I know you all are frustrated too. So I just wanted to put that out there and make sure we don't lose sight of the bigger picture as opposed to just I mean, it's great to put wireless capability at a fire station, but we really don't want our parents driving kids to the fire station to have to do their homework.
This is Bill Haggis from Siler City, and just piggybacking on the homeless discussion, we actually hosted a call recently, 2 hours long, with different agencies in town, and we are going to be bringing up at our next meeting the first Monday in September, after Labor Day, of course, but creating a task force to look at homelessness in Siler City and the things that we can do as a community and other leaders to take care of that.
This is Rebecca Whitehoff-Salmon from Sanford. On the homelessness issue, as we started to see a lot of increase in our economic development, we've also seen an increase in some of our homeless population and also an increase just awareness of what was already there. We created a homelessness task force called S3 Housing Connect, and really tried to bring all the different stakeholders in the community together to create a comprehensive solution that we're still building on. But if you want to sort of look into the model that we use to get that started, it actually we have a website for it, which is just s3housingconnect.com. And I know that I was not the council member that worked on that project intensely, but I know that in Sanford, we'd be happy to talk to you about how we set that up, because it's going to take a whole community answer. And it's just, once you become aware of it, I think everyone's going to start to see it more and more. And it really does need to be addressed. So if we can be of a resource, we're happy to help.
Anyone else have anything to share? Well, I want to thank y'all for a great virtual meeting, and I look forward to the next meeting, and at some point we'll see you in person. But is there any other items, business for our agenda?
Yes, this is Will Mullaney. I just want to thank those counties that came in and gave us just spoke about the homeless, and I did write some stuff down, and I think I have your name, so I'll probably be sending you an email. I really thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. If not, we look forward to a Moore County presentation sometime in the near future. And with that, is there a motion for us to adjourn?
So moved, Mark Wilson.
Second, Commissioner Ferguson.
Motion made by Mark Wilson and seconded by Kathleen Ferguson. Is that correct, Renee?
Haven O'Donnell.
Okay. And I think there's also another second. So with this motion, we do not need a roll call vote. All in favor, if you would take your phone off mute and just say yes.
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 Unopposed?
Yes. Crawford wants to keep you guys on the phone all night.
Well, you better have some brandy there somewhere, right, Jim?
That's right. Apple brandy.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Good night. I hear a train.
I think so. Why?